Welcome to Y'all Ain't Right, a podcast about Mississippi politics with Robert Johnson and Brandon Jones. On today's show, we'll discuss the appointment of Judge Assma Ali to the Benoit municipal judgeship, a funny ad out of Texas, and another redistricting update. Y'all Ain't Right is proudly sponsored by Chisholm Strategies, a leading direct voter contact firm rooted in the South with decades of experience helping campaigns from the courthouse to the White House reach, persuade, and mobilize voters. Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
I was thinking about it being fantasy football season. I'm in too many leagues myself. I don't think you're in too many.
I'm only in one.
Yeah.
1 year in.
And you and I have been in a league for 6 years.
Right.
I was thinking about that too. It started during COVID.
Yes.
And we've got just some of the best people in it from across the state. I was thinking today we've got to schedule our draft, which is always good. I don't think I've ever asked, what are you more into, college or pro football?
I'm always into college, whether it's basketball or football, but now it's more balanced since the NIL.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, college used to seem like it was raw. Everybody's playing to move somewhere. And now I don't know. I don't think it's changed. It just feels different. But no, I was like college. But the funny thing about, I'm more like that about basketball. The funny thing about football is even pro football seems a little more real than, say, pro basketball. It's like pro basketball cruises for like a third or 2/3 of a season, and then they ramp it up. But football is balls out.
Yeah.
All the time. So
well, the games all matter.
The games all matter, right. Yeah.
You have teams that are making the playoffs by such a fraction. One of my favorite memories of recent college football seasons was your son's last year at Jackson State.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Oh, it was fun.
I mean, there was a great energy going to those games.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, I tell my son, I said, you playing high school football and college football was the best time of my life. I drove everywhere they went, every game. My wife and I never missed one. And he's going to be embarrassed. But he said, look, I'm coaching now. You don't have to come to every game. I said, we don't have anything else to do. So, yeah.
I may join you.
Yeah,
I may have to come
great.
over there.
That'd
Come and maybe just yell some things down to him. My daughter plays in the band at Southern Miss. She's in the Pride of the South.
You told me that.
And that's added. You know, she's not scoring touchdowns, but there's something cool about seeing your child on a bowl game field. You know, they play in the New Orleans Bowl this year, and I was like, you know, I didn't get to do anything in the Superdome.
and you know, you see how hard they work, and then you see it.
Yeah.
You see the production. So
they're in their two-a-days right now. And I'm here to tell you, as a band dad, it's hot.
People do not realize how hard those guys work, the band folks. They do a lot of work. Yeah.
Well, I'm probably going to beat you again in fantasy, but I still love you. And, you know, our buddy Chris Bell will still lead the league in trash talk.
Yeah, he'll trash talk about nothing.
Yes.
You won't beat me this year because I did so bad last year. I'm going to get a good draft choice.
That's right. Well, look, this is not really something that I would like to talk about because I think it puts a little bit of highlight on us that we don't like, that kind of reminds us of things we've been negotiating around and debating for years. But let's talk about the reaction to the appointment of attorney Assma Ali as a municipal judge for the town of Benoit in Bolivar County. And before folks call in, Benoit is Benoit here in Mississippi.
Yeah.
Judge Ali is now a municipal judge. These judges in Mississippi handle ordinance violations and misdemeanors.
Yeah.
They're appointed. It should have been a non-event. I mean, that should be the story. Municipal judge appointed, you know, in the story. Sadly, it was not. The Mississippi Independent reports that within days, a false claim spread online that Ali had been appointed in Ridgeland, which of course is 130 miles away from Bolivar County. And then the city of Ridgeland issued a release refuting the claim, noting that it had made no judicial appointments. That correction accomplished little. Of course, on the internet, corrections and facts often do. Ali, who is a Muslim and wears a hijab, said her office began receiving threats. Unfortunately, some of the saber rattling came from the elected class. Senator Michael McClendon, a Republican from Hernando, called for the town to remove her posting that he believes in God we trust, not Muhammad. And then Agriculture Commissioner Andy Gibson, a Republican running for governor, who we've talked about a couple times on this program, he pledged to ban Sharia law in Mississippi if elected. Judge Ali said, I only represent one law, and that's the U.S. Constitution. She said her ability to respond is limited because, of course, she's a judge. And the few comments she has made, she has returned to the same point, that she was born and raised in the U.S. and that she's not disqualified because of her religion. So it's tempting to see all this as political clickbait. She's never brought her personal religious beliefs into play, nor expressed any interest in doing so. But as the Mississippi Independent writes, despite that, a loud cacophony has been created by a conservative state senator and a candidate for governor and a national online campaign. So again, Robert, not something that I'm thrilled to bring to you and talk about on the show, but it seems that it's big enough that we should address it.
Look, Michael McClendon, Senator McClendon, needs an issue. He has to make it up. And what is this about? I believe in God we trust, not Muhammad. Islam worships a God too. There's no special God.
It's a theology podcast.
And what is it? And Andy Gibson, who is this runner, he needs attention as well because he's not the front runner running for governor, so he has to create something. And this whole idea about Sharia law, take the time to understand it's not a law, it's a practice. It's how people who are Islamic, it's how they worship, how they conduct themselves. I think the origin of the word is something like "take me to the water." There's so many things about Islam and Christianity that are similar. But let me tell you, the thing that gets me is you can't find people who are bigger Christian, or is a bigger Christian than Andy Gibson. What are you afraid of? I thought you had the superior God. I thought there was nothing more powerful than the love of Christ. And so why are you afraid of one woman who may have a different faith, but clearly has nothing to do with her practice of law? And so it's really disingenuous. I always ask myself, why do Christians, and I'm a Christian, but why do they always have to tell somebody, I'm more Christian than you, or my God is better than your God? All that aside, this young lady has never talked about her religion. This has nothing to do with her religion. And I did some research, found out that she met the mayor of Benoit at a conference or something. And they were talking about how they were having budgetary problems. They couldn't pay anybody. And she said, look, if you need a judge to help you all collect fines and rule on ordinances, those kind of things, I'll do it for free. And they said, no, we'll pay you. Her practice is in Ridgeland. She's an immigration lawyer. She volunteered to do this. They said, we'll pay you. And $400 a month to drive 260 miles round trip. She's still volunteering. So she's just doing a service. But, people need something to raise hell about. And, Gibson.
I think you're right. I think it is thoughtless pandering, but it burns me up because in this country, we have long said we do not have a religious test for government. Our founding documents, the whole basis of what we're supposed to have here.
That's why this country was organized.
Is that we're not going to require that you go to a particular church.
Right.
We're not going to thought police your individual beliefs or your non-beliefs. And that has served us pretty well. And so there's a constitutional imperative that we not behave this way. But then there's a human cost to this. And you mentioned part of it. I mean, she's driving a long way to do a job that's pretty thankless, even more thankless now. But think about the enormous stress now that this attorney, who, by the way, also has an excellent reputation in the bar and is very well liked by everyone that practices with her.
Yeah, people send cases to her. If you not got an immigration problem, she's the person to go to.
She has an excellent reputation, is now having to deal with threats, is now having to deal with this landscape of social media that has been directed against her by these political figures. I think it's shameless. It is pandering, but in this day and age, that thoughtless pandering can have real life effects.
Yeah.
Political violence is real.
We just burned
People
down.
Act on these.
A guy
things.
tried to burn down the synagogue.
The synagogue,
right?
Yeah.
And then there have been threats to burn down the Museum of Islamic or Muslim History.
Well, there was someone who left a comment on Facebook to one of these people's posts.
They should burn it down.
So this is dangerous, and it has a real cost. I hate to think of what it has meant for her and her family. I hope that she's being surrounded in love. I hope she's being surrounded by support. I was pleased to see the statement by the mayor and then the town there standing by her. But this is where you can go way too far in the way that you talk politically. And these two guys are two examples of way crossing the line. They should both apologize. Frankly, this demonstrates to me, and this may sound strong to you, Robert, I think you're disqualified for office when you behave this way and when you talk this way. And when you would turn the vitriol that they have turned on this person just to score a little cheap political point.
It would be great if we could disqualify him for office. That would be the remedy, and people would do it. But I think
we can't do it on this podcast.
Right. We can't do it here, but it's unfortunate, and it is terrible.
And
it's dangerous.
It's so dangerous. And there are a few layers to this story. Thankfully, some good people acting out in good ways. Mississippi Today says that faith leaders have denounced Gibson's comments. Leaders from several faith communities gathered at the International Museum of Muslim Culture here in downtown Jackson on Friday. And they got together to call Gibson out. The group that held this event is nonpartisan civic engagement organizations, some nonprofits, churches, other religious institutions from across Jackson and the state. I wanted to read this quote. This comes from Rhoda Yoder of the Open Door Mennonite Church. The minister was speaking on behalf of Working Together Jackson and Working Together Mississippi. This reckless and dangerous rhetoric by an elected official and a candidate for governor has no place in our public discourse. They also asked Gibson for a meeting to have an honest and open dialogue. But I think that's right. I think that's well said. This has no place in our public discourse. I don't want to write this off as just, well, we just talk this way now in politics. Now we just say these things. There has to be some line about what is acceptable and not acceptable. And in my view, this just crosses that line completely.
Yeah. Well, it would be great if leadership like the governor, the attorney general, people like that would speak out and denounce this kind of behavior and denounce the idea of it. But they haven't said anything.
Have we ever had Tate Reeves denounce anything like that was bad? Like, I know that he'll jump on this. I'm kind of surprised he didn't. But has he ever like checked his own political allies?
No.
I'm not aware of any time that he has ever
and they've been terrible, but he's never said a word. He's no word of criticism.
On something that involved like ethics or morality or, just political discourse. I don't recall any example. Call in if you have an example and we'll make a correction. But I did mention the Benoit officials there. They defended her and their decision to appoint her as judge. Here's what the mayor said. Religion is not listed as a qualification for service as a municipal court judge in the state of Mississippi. Being Muslim is not a lawful basis for denying or terminating the appointment. We are pleased to have her. So good for them. And they're right. Maybe they can do a CLE on, what the standards for municipal judges are for the legislature and gubernatorial candidates. But I wanted to mention that. It's a big story. It's a big story on social media. And unfortunately, it puts Mississippi in a conversation that we are too often in. And I guess as long as we're in that conversation, we shouldn't be afraid to engage and call people out and say, this is unacceptable. And Andy was way off here. That senator was way off here. I don't know who that guy is, but what a mess. And I hope we don't hear from them again on this.
Well, you'll hear from them.
Well,
they can't help themselves.
I guess you're right. So look, we've talked a little bit about close U.S. Senate races, and the one that we like the most is happening here in Mississippi. But there are other U.S. Senate races that are close, including in Texas, where we have to mention Ken Paxton and James Tallarico. They're in a close race, and there have been some polls that have come out since we talked last that has Paxton at 47, Tallarico at 46. This is just one of several, but they're neck and neck. There's ton of money flying around this race. Texas is an expensive place to play. A lot of money, a lot of ads.
Did I hear 70 million mentioned at one time? They're spending that kind of money over there.
It's the gross domestic product of several small nation states. I mean, it's a lot of money. And what lots of money means is a lot of ads. And we wanted to share one that we thought was pretty good. And so, Emily, if we could, let's play that one.
This is Ken Paxton. And this is Ken Paxton stealing someone's $1,000 pen. Here's what happened. The incident happened at the Collin County Courthouse, the same courthouse where Paxton would later be indicted for investment fraud. Paxton walked up to the trays next to the metal detectors, rummaged through them, and came across someone else's expensive Mont Blanc pen. He decided to take it for himself. The pen belonged to Joe Joplin, a local attorney who'd accidentally left it behind. It was a special gift from his wife. When Joe realized it was missing, he contacted courthouse security. This is the footage they pulled. Ken Paxton, on camera, stealing this man's pen. After the police got involved, Joe got his pen back. He could have pressed charges, but he decided against it because Joe's a nice guy. He'd never take someone else's pen. but he also hasn't forgotten who took his.
Hi, I'm Joe Joplin, and I endorse James Tallarico for the United States Senate.
Vote for James Tallarico. He won't steal your pen.
Okay, so I like when people have fun in politics. I like it whenever they find something that kind of tells a story about somebody that's kind of undeniable.
Yeah.
The fact that they went out and found this lawyer who looks like he's been retired for a while, who, you know, you and I have both been in federal courthouses.
Yeah.
And man, I don't care if you're in office. I don't care what you are. It is an intense process to enter a federal court.
It is.
So these guys had to put their pens in a basket, as we've all had to do.
Right.
In fact, you can't even have a cell phone in a federal courtroom unless you're the attorney, and sometimes you even then have to ask the judge for permission. So he leaves a pen, a very nice pen.
I haven't seen his ad.
And Paxton comes around and fishes his pen out of the basket and walks off with it. And here we are years later, and Tallarico is using it in his ad. That's just good stuff. I would wish for every good candidate this year to have that kind of thing to say. And look, there's plenty to say about Ken Paxton. He has been part of a very public divorce. He's been an absolute loon there in Texas, causing all kinds of problems. Even his supposed friends in the Republican Party have enormous trouble with him.
Didn't he get impeached by his own party?
His impeachment story was interesting. He survived ultimately, but he lost.
They was overturned in the Senate, but he did get impeached, but it was reversed.
Just incredible public disregard for his family.
Well, look. This is interesting. It's sort of a segue into this because we were just talking about, you know, this idea of a Muslim judge, and she's not a Christian and whatever. That's a big deal going on in Texas in this race is who's the bigger Christian, Ken Paxton or Tallarico? Paxton represents a portion of the voting populace that calls themselves evangelicals. I would argue that Tallarico is probably more universal, probably more Protestant, but you know there have been big discussions about.
Well, one of them went to divinity school, and it's not the Republican.
It's not the Republican, and one of them cheated on his wife, committed adultery, and all kinds of things.
Steals very expensive pens.
Expensive pens, and his wife went to counseling, do reconciliation, and ultimately she said, "Nope, I got to get a divorce because it was warranted on biblical grounds." In the pleadings, it was adultery. And they asked evangelicals, well, what about the fact, well, no man is perfect, and we serve a forgiving God. But they're angry and call Tallarico blasphemous because he supports transgender kids and made the comment that God is non-binary. And I'm like, what's so foreign about that? This idea that God is a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes is ridiculous. God is not a person. God is an entity. If anything, he's non-binary. He certainly doesn't favor one person over the other. But you're the theologian. You went to divinity school. You tell me how far off that whole idea is.
Yeah, you know, I think that what has gotten under the skin of Paxton and what gets under the skin of his political team is that Tallarico has been such a clear-spoken person who is a person of faith. And I think that has just rubbed them the wrong way.
And people listen.
This is a person who has done hard work to try to bring complex theological, philosophical things into the public dialogue and to talk about things in a different way. And look, deny it as we might, when you get into the Bible Belt, and Texas is certainly in it, these types of things have some relevance. Now, look, I will tell you, personally, my stomach turns anytime I hear someone trying to use their faith to cudgel somebody in a political argument. I don't think it has a place for that. I don't like the kind of cheap shot of trying to use religion and God to
I don't either, but that's who he is.
But it's part of the dialogue.
He does it better. He does it, I think, in a more valid way than anybody else. I mean, his basic tenet is, what do you operate from? This idea, love yourself, love your neighbor, and love God. And you can't do any of those three things and ignore the poor, ignore the hungry. You can't treat people any kind of way if you believe in those three things. I feel about Christian nationalists the same way I feel about social democrats. I don't need to give them I don't even like the name, call them Christian nationalists. They're just mostly just racist, call themselves conservatives. What they believe in just doesn't have any basis in what I think. I'm a Christian, the God I serve. I don't think he is a judgmental God. I don't think that's who he is.
Yeah, you know, I think...
listen to me, who he is, but anyway, that's all.
Yeah, or she.
Or she,
right.
Look,
I think that his use of this type of language in the public setting is upsetting. And I think It's a little bit of an absurdity. It's a little bit of Paxton and his team flailing and looking for anything. But I do think that you and I have grown up in a place where the religious right had heavy sway. In a place like Mississippi, we have seen countless elected officials who have used their religion as a badge of honor and as a public calling card for who they are as a
Because
politician.
across Republican and Democratic lines, black and white, we're an extremely religious state.
And now we have seen them sort of become part of this cult of personality on the right, which is led by a person who has been adjudicated a rapist,
Yeah.
who has been adjudicated a swindler, who is not allowed to run a nonprofit in certain places because of how dishonest, who was referenced thousands of times in a secret dossier about the most notorious pedophile in American life, who
He sells Bibles for profit.
and puts his name on.
Puts his name on.
Has sold just about everything you can sell and has kind of made a laughing stock out of this notion of whatever it is that religious right is by their subversion to him. And now they're sort of blind following of him. We're almost in a place in our American discourse and political dialogue where you don't hear some of the same calls for ethics and morality in the White House that we grew up with when that cottage industry was formed to attack Bill Clinton, who had a problem, keeping it in the marriage.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Mississippi where you couldn't go into a drugstore or a grocery store and not hear someone bemoaning the fact that Bill Clinton wasn't faithful to his wife. Now we've got a guy who's having to settle lawsuits with porn stars and is on his third, fourth marriage, and all sorts of things in between. And some of our friends who were part of the, I don't know about this guy that cheats on his wife thing, have just followed this new guy.
Yeah. I remember talking to people who I actually thought were pretty moderate during the whole Clinton thing, and they just thought Clinton had destroyed the presidency and he had destroyed the integrity of government because he had an affair. And what he did was terrible. But the idea that it was the end of the American empire was ludicrous. But look, I hope I didn't engage in making excuses. My position has always been is that we don't legislate morality. We don't judge, that kind of thing is personal. That's between a man and his wife. And I hope that there should be a penance to pay for it, but it's not ours to do. And I feel the same way about Donald Trump, because in my opinion, the things that he was accused of and the things he said have been open and obvious. I don't know how you get elected with that. I would never be afraid of exposing all that and say, look, you do what you want to do, but is this a person that you would want to be your president? Is this a person you would want to be your high school principal? No, I wouldn't. But for people to elect him and then make excuses for him and say things like, God sent him. Let me tell you what, it has been one of the worst things that has happened to people of faith in terms of getting people to be younger people to be more engaged in the church and to believe what they're doing. Because if you make those kind of excuses, what do you want them to believe?
Hey, dude, the numbers are down.
I know they are.
The hypocrisy quotient is off the chart. I think people have, the emperor has no clothes. I mean, if this counts for, you beat us over the head for decades about how morality was so important, personal ethics was so important, personal responsibility was so important, how you comport yourself as a person in your family is so important. And then you go off the rails for this guy and you split up Thanksgiving dinner over this guy and you blindly support this guy no matter what he does, you've lost credibility. And if you don't know that, just look at the numbers. Folks are not coming around to this. And look, let's say this. I've told you before, and I've said it today. I'm not a big fan of using religion as a cudgel in political dialogue. But part of what you do on a podcast is you say what you wish was true, but then you also have to deal with just the facts as they are. And the truth is, religion is a part of the conversation if you're running for office in Texas or if you're running for office in Mississippi. And
that's fine. I mean, it's sort of identifying what club you're in. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with, go back to what you started talking about, the founders of this country and why we're here and what they wrote in the Constitution about the establishment of religion. And this idea, I get so tired. The first time I heard this was when Kirk Fordyce was governor. He said, we are a country built on the principle of, we are a Judeo-Christian nation. I'm like, that's bullshit. In fact, that's the one thing that they ran away from. This is the one thing they didn't want. They ran away from religious persecution. They didn't want that to factor into government at all. You can be what you want. And most of us may be Christians, whether we Quakers or Puritans, whatever we may be, but that's not That's not how we're going to operate as a country. And now we've gotten to the point that that's a basis for picking your leaders or a basis for how you pass a law. That is the opposite of what the founding fathers.
Well, I'm laughing too because Kirk Fordyce was not exactly a sterling figure of what integrity in personal life looks like. He had some rather public issues with that. And by the way, you can almost set your watch by the second that a politician starts talking to you about sex, there's a sex problem somewhere. The second they start talking to you about religion and morality, you can pretty much guess there's going to be some morality problem somewhere.
The minute a person starts doing that, I say, okay, can't trust him. I can't trust her.
And just
I know where this is
look
going.
at Mississippi politics at our most outspoken sex police. And they typically are the ones that have a little bit of a hard time if they stay in office long enough.
Absolutely.
Well, I didn't know we would have Theology Corner. But, I mean, look, it's part of it. I did want to show that ad, though, because I think it's a tremendous example of how you can inject fun into an ad. Emily and I were talking about it. How amazing that this lawyer was sitting on this information for that long. And then he comes out at the end and he's like, well, I endorse James Tallarico for Senate. That's just beautiful. I love that. I wish that for all the candidates I'm pulling for this year. I hope you can find somebody with that type of story. Also, to have it on video, just beautiful. Sometimes things come around. Ken Paxton is a guy that's been stepping on himself since he entered public life. He's lived a charmed public life. He's proof that we do not live in a meritocracy when people like him get elected, because he's probably not qualified to work the tilt-a-whirl at the Jackson County Fair.
No.
But he keeps getting elected. It's fun whenever a real candidate with real qualifications can do something that helps his campaign and pokes fun at a character like that, because he is a joker, and people like Paxton should be laughed at. I hope he gets laughed out of public life. We'll see. It's up to you, Texas. All we can do is do our Mississippi podcast.
Well, all over the country, though, Brandon, this is the thing that I think people are beginning to make the connection of how important. This may be Texas, but Texas is part of the fabric of how we're going to change the country.
Yeah.
We need to change the leadership in the Senate. We need to change the leadership in the House. We have to wait to change the leadership in the White House, but those are very important. And if you don't like the way things are now, if you want to do something about it, what you have to do is be part of that fabric. You got to put your guy in. You got to put the guy in that's going to help our guy. We got to get Scott Cologne. You have to get Tallarico. People in Michigan have to get Syed.
Yeah. El Sayed.
We have to change what's going on in Washington. Everybody has their job to do.
Yeah, and, as people who are political animals like we are, we like to watch these races and we like to see who's performing well. And
you like to watch it.
Well, I do. Yeah, I do. I'm watching a lot of races closely, including this week. I'm not going to mention it here. Don't want to jinx it, but we'll see.
You got some things.
So look, we have a few updates on redistricting, and I guess, Robert, this is just going to be part of the cadence of the podcast as we move
every
into
week,
this, because it's an important issue.
Yes.
It's going to be something that we spend an enormous amount of time on next year. And so we will continue to keep people up to speed. This first update is about your old friend, Robert Foster, a former state representative. Taylor Vance at Mississippi Today has this story out of DeSoto County. Your boy, Robert, former candidate for governor, just world-class troll on the internet. Yeah. Current member of the DeSoto County Board of Supervisors, which had me scratching my head. I didn't realize
not know that either.
I did not fact check it. So, again, call in if we got that wrong. He and others filed a lawsuit claiming that the legislature's creation of a majority black district in DeSoto County violates the Voting Rights Act. This is a subjudicial deceit. When Calais happened, you knew the Woolly Burgers were going to come out of the shadows trying to pull all kinds of things. You just kind of knew that Andy Gibson was going to be loud.
Yeah.
You kind of knew that people like Robert Foster were going to be loud. These are the people who never miss an opportunity to be divisive and to be mean.
Yeah.
And to show how tough they are and how angry they are. So you kind of knew that there would be a Foster component to any weird story in Mississippi. But he filed this lawsuit. U.S. District Judge Sharon Aycock ruled on Thursday that a court order changing the district lines for an upcoming judicial race falls too close to the November election date. So she said no. She also said that the plaintiffs hadn't provided enough evidence to justify the court's involvement. So again, this was filed by Robert and others. They filed it against the State Board of Election Commissioners, which for people who don't know, I know you know, but it's composed of the governor, the Secretary of State, and the AG. Of course, those are all Republican statewide officials. Even though she denied it from going into effect, litigation can still proceed. So we may not have heard the end of that. I wanted to flag that because that's just one of those ancillary examples of the type of thing we're going to be fighting over as a result of Calais. County leaders demanding mid-decade redistricting.
I mean, what's crazy is, look, these guys, Robert Foster, McClendon, Andy Gibson, they need to put their diapers on and go back to the house. The world is changing. The fact that Robert Foster wants to complain about a majority African-American district in DeSoto County is going to be majority African-American probably sooner than he cares for. People migrate. People are moving out of Memphis to move across state lines because of the cost of living. These are professional people who have good jobs. They're moving to DeSoto County. The population is continuing to be in a flux. You can complain, but you can't do anything about it.
The world must seem like a very scary place for some of these people, because this is really what it boils down to. It boils down to just, I guess, living in fear of the other, living in fear of difference. I mean, and then you build this public persona off of getting people scared about the same things you're scared of.
You are a very, what can I say? You're my friend. You're a very good guy. And you're even better as a good white guy. I don't get to say that much. But this is the problem. This is the problem. The thing I continue to fight for, the passion I have, is because I want to be in a position where it can be self-determination, that I can be part of a collective that says, no, you can't have it your way all the time. This is what we want. We got the numbers. We're going to do that. And people like Robert Foster and Michael McClendon and Andy Gibson are afraid that they can't just put their foot down and have things the way they want it all the time. It doesn't continue to be just a white guy's world. We are a democracy, and we are made up of a conglomeration of a lot of different people. And now it's beginning to be that conglomeration that everybody's coming together to have something to say, and it won't be one voice. And people like Robert Foster can't deal with that. I served with it. And I used to sort of chuckle with him every once in a while, but I began to realize this guy's a nut. This guy really believes that what people won't say, but what they express is that they believe this country is a country of white men, that white men organized it, white men wrote the Constitution, white men decided how it was going to be. But what those white men who had wisdom did was said, people. They didn't say us. They didn't say men. They wrote a document that they expected to evolve and be a part of something that would include everybody. That inclusion is happening, and it's happening all over the country. You can't run enough immigrants out of the country for it not to happen. This country is becoming what this country has always been destined to be, a melting pot. And that's
a very scary prospect for some people. And there are people who are just really terrified by that. And there are people who have made their entire political bones, had their entire political life set by relying on people being fearful around that.
Yeah.
And people being angry around that. It's a truth that we have to reckon with, that this is fear-based. And, I think about it too. I think of how kind of silly this is. The people and we are blowing off a lot of steam today.
I thought that's what we did every week.
We're really getting into it a little bit. But look, think about some of the folks who we've talked about today. And there are many others who come to mind who live their life in this kind of grievance echo chamber, that are angry and mad and talking about how their world is getting taken away from them. Their state is getting taken away from them. We have to take the country back. We have to take the state back. Now, isn't it interesting, in a place where white Republicans control the White House, control the Supreme Court, control the House and Senate in D.C., in Mississippi have every statewide office, have most local offices, have just about every square foot of political power that you can have in the entire state and country, and are still yelling at us every day about how power is being taken from them? That, to me, tells the tale on all of this, is that now that you have almost universal governing power, you are still complaining about all these various things that are being done to you. By whom and how? You have the control, you have the power, and it's this kind of fear-mongering. It kind of shows the hypocrisy of it. It kind of shows that some of that are people who know what they're doing and they're stirring people up. But I also think how small and how sad that the 5% of politics that isn't going your way right now is causing you to carry on in this way, and to be the way that you are. It's striking and it's sad. And I don't know, you mentioned God
have such a nice way of saying
well, it's an illness. It's an illness.
It's weak and it's disgusting.
It's an illness. It's a character defect.
It's crazy. I serve in a legislature that in the House that the Republicans have a supermajority. And they're complaining all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what you
How sad to have a supermajority.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm in the twilight zone. I'm angry all the time. And hell, you can't, that anger corner, that's mine. You can't have that one. You got too much. Now, if you give me what you have, you can have my anger count, and I won't be angry about anything. If I can have your power, your numbers, and control, there's no way I would act like you.
Well,
I'd
it's
be,
funny. I mean,
it's just crazy.
a lot of our conservative talking heads in Mississippi, I mean, they're literally people who have gotten everything they've asked for.
We were talking about
they're
redistricting. I don't mean to interrupt
still
you.
angry.
You know, one of the most ridiculous things, and I was at this conference, the idea that the governor says, we got to get rid of the tyranny of Benny Thompson. I mean, what, Benny, you lock
One of the most comical lines uttered this year. I mean, it's pretty
my
good.
God. Here's a man who controls hundreds of millions of dollars that he could help poor and disadvantaged people all over the state, money that came from Washington, D.C. that's in his gubernatorial pockets, not that the legislature controls,
Right.
that he can call balls and shots, and he doesn't do anything.
Don't tell me Tate Reeves doesn't have a sense of humor. Look, I've mentioned this outlet a couple times. I wanted to say this because people are always looking for news sources. They're looking for like reliable places to check in on things in their neighborhood. And, we don't have as many daily newspapers in Mississippi as we used to. It's gotten harder to find news. We do have some great outlets, and we will try as we go to highlight some places where people can go to get some information. But Darian Arrington is a reporter at the Mississippi Independent, and I do not know him personally, but he is doing some great work. I've mentioned him a few times on here. He's written 2 stories that basically underscore some of the challenges facing what we know is going to be a very fraught redistricting process. I wanted to highlight these. Number 1, he wrote a story about how most of the upcoming hearings we have been talking about on this show are taking place in white majority counties.
Wow.
He points out that the locations the legislature chose, and you'll have a rebuttal here in a minute. He points out that the locations the legislature chose fall mostly outside the state's majority black areas. 5 of the 8 are in counties that are majority white. 3 are in majority black counties. I wanted to flag that. Here's the other story he wrote. In the second story, he talked about the composition of the 20-member Joint Appropriation Redistricting Committee, and he highlighted that Republicans hold a 4-to-1 advantage with 16 Republicans and 4 Democrats. I think we had kind of said those things, but we said them in passing. I like the fact that there's an outlet out there that is highlighting some of these statistics and facts just to say, hey, don't go into this with blinders on. I mean, this redistricting process is by and large going to be a Republican exercise, and this is what it looks like.
Well, it's been a Republican exercise. That's not new. It doesn't stop people from showing up. He says the majority of them are white counties. For instance, I'm sure Lauderdale may be a majority white county, but they're holding the redistricting in Meridian, which is a majority black town. Black city with a black mayor.
Yeah.
And so Democratic mayor. And in Natchez, they're holding one in Natchez, majority African-American, majority Democrat with a Democratic mayor who used to be a Republican, but he's a Democrat now. My point is, he's right about all those things, but we have a response. And the fact that he's highlighting them makes it clear that we have to show up at these things. It can be a Republican exercise if you let it be a Republican exercise. When they have it on the coast, there's nothing to stop people from Gulfport and other places from showing up at those places to make sure their voices are heard. They have more of a reason to do that than anyone else. That's why the last program we said, show up and have something to say. Talk about the fact that you want to share your congressional district or your legislative district with people who have common interests. And what you'll find is that those are not white, black, or Republican or Democratic issues. Those are people who live there. We all have the same problems if we live in those areas.
One of the things you're reminding me of is sometimes we highlight the inequities in these things, like, hey, there's an overwhelming number of one party that's going to be making these decisions. Or let's just look at the demographics of where the meetings are being. We're not sharing that to suggest that your participation is not required.
No.
People need to be involved.
No.
And it's not one of those things to say, oh, the fix is in, throw up your hands and walk away.
The fix is in if you don't participate.
But I do, yeah. And so let's be clear about that. We want people to be participating. We want people to be engaging, as you just said. But it's important that we have eyes open and that we understand, hey, these are some of the challenges we're going to be dealing with. In fact, I wanted to say this, by the time people hear this, the Redistricting Committee will have held its first hearing at Itawamba Community College in Tupelo. The next one coming up will be at Northwest Mississippi Community College in Senatobia. That's going to be Thursday, August 27th. So we'll continue to keep those dates and locations in front of people. Robert, you talk to legislators every day.
Yes.
You're the Democratic leader in the House here in Mississippi. What are you hearing with respect to these hearings or just redistricting generally? What's the conversation been?
The same thing I said when we first started this podcast is that the idea that you're talking about redoing congressional districts is not going to happen because it'll end up creating opportunity districts that Republicans don't want, and that would be good for the state of Mississippi. So I'm not so much afraid. They can have these hearings, but there's no appetite for any serious redistricting because they've done it. They've done the gerrymandering. They have choked the gerrymandering to its very end. And so that's the thing. The other issue is they like the idea of having a supermajority. And I say they, the leadership in the House and the Senate like the idea of having a supermajority. And the fact that the Senate is one vote away from having a supermajority, the Senate feels compelled to try to do something to reverse that. So I do think those two new Senate districts, the one in Hattiesburg and the one in DeSoto County, the third one was just a replacement for John Horn. That district was already there. And then you have one in the House. And my understanding, this is the rumor, that there's no real appetite to do much on that either. So I think that is an exercise, a dog and pony show, to be able to show the people who elected them, the people who like that red meat, to feel like we're going to take this country back, we're going to take our state back. You mean the state that you already own? The state that you're already in complete control of? Yeah, I think that they want to make it a big issue. But that's also why it's important for people to show up. I don't want people to think that nothing will happen. Under this Calais decision, they can do things that we would have never imagined. They could draw all kinds of weird districts that don't make any sense except to elect Republicans or elect somebody white and male. They could do that if that's what they want to do. But I don't think that's where we're headed. The optimist in me feels like even the most conservative people, when I talk to them at the legislature, they kind of want to figure out a way to get along. They want to figure out a way to work with people and to address problems that don't necessarily come out of the Heritage Foundation. They want to address problems that we need to address here in the state of Mississippi.
I'm going to call that a hot take because I think what a lot of observers expect out of Mississippi is that they are going to attempt what has been attempted in Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and elsewhere. I think what I'm hearing you say is that two things. Number one, we have been gerrymandered over the course of two redistricting
the last
cycles
20
that
years.
makes this more challenging.
Yes.
One thing you didn't say, but I think is kind of informing what you're saying, is our nearly 40% Black population puts us as the highest Black population in the entire country.
They don't have anywhere to go.
So that becomes challenging.
Right.
The other thing that's kind of implicit in what you're saying is the governing problem. You and I have both known Republican leaders in the state who have said, I think we're good.
Yes.
We got enough. It's starting to become hard to manage these people.
Look.
The farther extreme that you get, and just look at Congress. Look at Congress. Congress has done nothing for ages. And part of that is because all of the gerrymandering has brought all the extremists to Congress. These extremists are constantly doing things like what we see out of people like Robert Foster, Andy Gibson. It's those types of characters that are constantly throwing up red meat for the base. Well, you can't get any work out of those people, because they're constantly trying to put on this dog and pony show for the angriest of their constituents. That becomes untenable in state legislatures where you have to pass a budget every year.
Well, it becomes untenable across the board because, as a Republican said to me when they first took over, not supermajority, but when the Republicans took over the House and the Senate. And after about a couple of years, leadership in the House, and senators said this to me, she said, this is not as good as we thought it would be.
They're fighting all the time.
They're fighting with each other all the time. But the other issue is they always had somebody to push back. When there was a problem, they could always blame somebody.
Yeah.
How do you blame somebody when you have complete control? Who do you blame?
Who's going to be the boogeyman?
Who do you have to be afraid of? And so what happens is, and you see it in Congress, and you see it in the state of Mississippi to a certain extent, but more so in Congress, then they just make it up. They just make up a problem. They just turn it into, we got a problem with boys going into girls' bathrooms. You mean the one transgender person that we have in the state of Mississippi, whoever that may be, or 2 or 3 or 4 out of almost 2 million people, you're afraid of that? You're making it up. Let's talk about why our gross domestic product rates are growing at half of what the national average is. Our unemployment rate is higher than the national average. We still are the poorest state in the country. We still have some of the worst roads and bridges in the country. Can you tell me why we got 150-year-old lead pipes in the ground in just about every city in the state and you're doing nothing about it? 40% of the state doesn't have broadband. I know we got money to work on it, but it's moving mighty slow. So who are you going to blame for that? It's becoming untenable, and it's getting to a point Republicans now realize I don't have anybody to blame. Maybe I need to start working on people I can work with.
And look, our predictions about this process mean nothing. You and I are here partially for entertainment, partially to inform, But the truth is, we don't know how this redistricting process is going to play out.
We don't.
So we want people to participate. We know that the likelihood of it turning out better goes up based on voter participation.
Yes.
Based on people being there.
Yeah.
This is much more likely to be a better process if you go talk about your community, talk about what you would like to see the legislature doing. It could be as simple as doing what Robert does every week, which is talk about the things that you wish they were tackling rather than these issues.
Yes.
But then when it comes to redistricting, to talk about, hey, this is a community here. You start carving this thing up, we lose something.
Look,
it becomes harder to represent our true nature if you start to, draw us in ways that make less sense.
You can't carve it up if the majority of the people in the room said, no, this is what we want. And then you come back and do just the opposite. That's why it's important for you to be there.
Yeah.
To stand up and say, this is what we need, this is what's important, and this is what we think will work for us. And then ask the questions. So how important is it that we have communities of interest? How important is it that we have people who share the same geographic area? Ask those questions and tell them how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think this is a great opportunity for that. We don't have a lot of them. We don't have a lot of moments where people get to just go and talk candidly with their legislators, and especially those legislators who live outside of their district who are going to be very important to this decision making. I had a chance to serve on one of those traveling committees whenever I was in office, and it was really powerful. I remember learning, hey, that had not ever occurred to me. There's something about getting out of your district that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And of course, talking directly to voters, which happens so rarely now in our politics. So there's some good aspects to having these hearings. We urge you to participate. Go to the one that comes closest to you. Go to multiple if you can.
Yeah.
And so, look, that's it. That's what we got this week. We're going to have more. What I have learned doing this podcast is that there's no end to things we could talk about. It's mostly about sort of reining it in and limiting it down.
We spent a lot of time talking about the race in Texas and Tallarico.
Out of nowhere. So
I know.
That's just land
But
gap.
we didn't talk about the president getting carted away in a catering truck. We didn't talk about the fact that he left his staff and everybody
Save
on the
that for
plane
the
as a
catering
decoy.
show.
Yeah.
Look, if you like this episode, and we hope you did, please give it a 5-star rating on your podcast app. This show comes to people all different ways. There's a lot of different ways to download a podcast now. We would ask that you subscribe. We also have an Instagram account.
Yeah.
I don't mess with Instagram, but a lot of people do. If you're out there, interact with us, follow us. You can find us on other platforms as well. All of that is thanks to the very talented producer of this show, Emily Henderson.
Yeah, thanks,
Emily,
Ann.
thank you. No one would know what this is. It would just be me and Robert and the people in our fantasy football league if it wasn't for Emily. So thank you, Emily. Thank you, Chisholm Strategies, who sponsors the show. If you have ideas.
Well, that was going to be my next thing. If you're younger than 40, I don't get to talk to many of you, so send us some ideas, comments. Let us know something you want to talk about.
For people like us, you can use email.
Yeah.
hello@y'allain'trightpod.com. That's something we check, we'll read, and if you have something that we can use, we'll do it. We will be back next week for another episode. Robert Foster and Andy Gibson are going to try to stop us, but we're going to come back.
Yeah, we'll be back. I hope they try to stop us. Sometimes we need people to push back on, too. That helps us.
That's right.
Thank you.
See you then.
Yeah.